The lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating Sarah's tear-stained face for just a moment before plunging her back into darkness. She clutched the worn blue shirt to her chest, fingers tracing the faded initials embroidered on the pocket, initials that didn't belong to her husband. If you've ever held on to something you shouldn't, knowing it could destroy everything you've built, then you already understand the weight of what happens next. Before we continue this journey together, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional tales that explore the complexities of human relationships. Your support means everything, and I promise this story will take you on an unforgettable emotional journey. Sarah hadn't always been a keeper of secrets. At 34, she had built what most would consider a perfect life, a successful career as a hospital administrator, a beautiful colonial home in a quiet suburb, and 12 years of marriage to David, a kind-hearted architect whose patience and stability had been her anchor through life's storms. They had weathered much together, the heartbreak of 3 miscarriages, the loss of Sarah's mother to cancer, David's struggle with depression after his firm collapsed during the recession. Through it all, they had held each other up, their love deepening with each challenge overcome. But the blue shirt hidden in the back of her closet threatened to unravel everything. The storm outside mirrored the turbulence in Sarah's heart as she sat on the edge of her bed, David's gentle snoring from the other side of the room a painful reminder of his trust in her. The shirt had been tucked away for nearly 2 decades, a relic from another life, another love, one that had ended in tragedy rather than choice. Michael had been her first love, her college sweetheart, the boy with the crooked smile who wrote poetry and dreamed of changing the world. They had planned a future together until that rainy night in April when a drunk driver stole him away forever. Sarah had never told David about Michael. Not because she didn't trust him, but because the pain had been too raw, too personal. By the time they met 3 years later, she had packed away her grief along with Michael's belongings, determined to start fresh. Only the shirt remained, the one he had given her the night before the accident, the one she had slept in for months afterward, the one that still somehow held the faintest trace of his scent beneath the mustiness of time. For 12 years, the secret had seemed harmless. Until yesterday, when David had found a faded photograph while cleaning out the attic, Sarah and Michael, arms wrapped around each other, young and in love beneath a cherry blossom tree. "Who's this?" he had asked, his voice casual but his eyes searching. And Sarah had lied. Just an old friend from college. The first real lie of their marriage. The thunder rumbled again, closer now. Sarah wiped her tears with the back of her hand and stood up, moving to the window. The rain lashed against the glass in angry sheets, the wind bending the trees in their front yard to impossible angles. She pressed her forehead against the cool pane and closed her eyes. How had a simple omission grown into something that now felt like betrayal? She had never cheated on David, never even considered it. Yet this secret past, this hidden grief, suddenly felt like infidelity of the heart. The weight of it crushed her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Behind her, David stirred. "Sarah? What are you doing up?" His voice was thick with sleep, concerned rather than accusatory. She turned, quickly tucking the shirt behind her back. "Just watching the storm," she said, forcing a smile. "Go back to sleep." But David sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You've been crying." It wasn't a question. After 12 years, he could read her face like a familiar book. "What's wrong?" The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Sarah could lie again, blame her tears on a sad movie or work stress. She could tuck the shirt away once more and continue as they had been. But something in David's open, worried expression broke through her fear. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, moving back to the bed. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." As the storm raged outside, Sarah finally shared the story of Michael, their love, his death, the devastating grief that had nearly destroyed her. She showed David the shirt, explained its significance, and confessed her fear that acknowledging this past love somehow diminished what they had built together. David listened in silence, his expression unreadable in the dim light. When she finished, the quiet between them felt heavier than the humid air. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he finally asked, his voice gentle but hurt evident in the slight tremor of his words. Sarah clutched the shirt in her lap. At first, it hurt too much to talk about. Then, as time passed, it seemed unnecessary. Like opening a wound that had finally scarred over. She paused, gathering courage. "And I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would see me differently. That you would feel like you were competing with a ghost." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "That you would think I settled for you." David's sharp intake of breath told her the words had hit their mark. "Did you settle for me?" The question hung between them, the most dangerous one he could have asked. Sarah reached for his hand, relieved when he didn't pull away. "No," she said firmly. "I loved Michael with all the passion and intensity of first love. But what we have, David, it's deeper, stronger. It's been tested by real life, by loss and struggle and everyday challenges. I didn't settle. I grew into a love that's more substantial than anything I could have imagined at 20. Outside, the storm began to abate, the spaces between thunderclaps growing longer. David was quiet for so long that Sarah felt panic rising in her throat. Had she destroyed everything by finally telling the truth? Then he reached out, gently taking the shirt from her hands. He studied it for a moment before looking back at her. "Thank you for telling me," he said softly. "For trusting me with this part of you." Relief flooded through Sarah, but David wasn't finished. "I have something to show you too," he said, rising from the bed. He went to his dresser and pulled open the bottom drawer, reaching to the back. When he returned, he was holding a small wooden box Sarah had never seen before. "What's that?" she asked, curiosity temporarily displacing her anxiety. David sat beside her and opened the box. Inside was a collection of items, a hospital bracelet, a dried flower, a folded letter, and a small velvet ring box. "Before I met you," he began, "I was engaged." The revelation stunned Sarah into silence. In 12 years of marriage, David had never mentioned a previous engagement. "Her name was Rebecca," he continued, his voice steady but tinged with old pain. "We were together for 3 years. The wedding was planned for June." He picked up the hospital bracelet. In March, she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia. By May, she was gone. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "David, I had no idea." He nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. "I didn't talk about it. Couldn't. When I met you 2 years later, it felt like a second chance I didn't deserve." He looked down at the box. "I've kept these things all these years, not because I'm still in love with her, but because that experience shaped me. Loving and losing Rebecca taught me how precious and fragile life is. It made me appreciate every moment with you in a way I might not have otherwise." The parallels in their stories weren't lost on Sarah. All these years, they had both been carrying similar wounds, similar secrets, not out of deception but out of a misguided attempt to protect each other and themselves. "Why are you telling me now?" she asked. David closed the box and set it aside. "Because I want you to know that I understand. That loving someone before me doesn't diminish what we have. That your past is part of what made you the woman I fell in love with." He took her hands in his. "And because I think maybe we've both been afraid of the same thing, that being honest about our past loves would somehow threaten what we've built." The rain had softened to a gentle patter against the windows. Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. "So what do we do now?" she asked. David thought for a moment. "I think we stop hiding these parts of ourselves. Michael and Rebecca were important to us. They helped shape us into the people who found each other." He squeezed her hands. "Maybe instead of keeping them tucked away in boxes and closets, we find a way to honor them as part of our journey. The suggestion brought fresh tears to Sarah's eyes, but these were different, cleansing rather than corrosive. "I'd like that," she whispered. They talked until dawn, sharing stories they had never told before, about Michael's poetry and Rebecca's passion for photography, about grief and healing and the unexpected ways love transforms over time. As the first light of morning filtered through the curtains, they made a decision. The following weekend, they drove to a quiet spot by the lake where they had often picnicked during their early dating days. Together, they planted 2 young cherry trees side by side, one for Michael, one for Rebecca. Not as monuments to grief, but as living tributes to the loves that had helped shape their paths toward each other. Standing beside the newly planted trees, David wrapped his arm around Sarah's waist. "Do you think we would have appreciated what we have as much if we hadn't known loss first?" he asked. Sarah leaned into him, watching the sunlight dance on the lake's surface. "I don't know. But I do know that understanding each other's past makes what we have now even more precious." That night, Sarah took Michael's blue shirt from its hiding place. She no longer needed to keep it secret, but she wasn't ready to part with it either. Instead, she and David found a beautiful wooden frame. They placed the shirt inside along with the dried flower from David's box, tangible reminders of the loves they had lost and the deeper love they had found together. The frame took a place of honor on their bedroom wall, not as a shrine to the past, but as a testament to the honesty that had strengthened their bond. The secret that Sarah had feared would destroy everything had instead transformed their marriage, deepening their connection through vulnerability and truth. Years later, when their adopted daughter asked about the framed shirt, they told her the story, about stormy nights and hidden treasures, about grief and second chances, about how the hardest truths often lead to the most beautiful revelations. They taught her that love isn't diminished by sharing its history, that honesty requires courage, and that sometimes the secrets we fear most are the very ones that can set us free. As the seasons changed and the cherry trees grew tall and strong, Sarah and David's love continued to deepen, not despite their past losses, but because of the wisdom those experiences had granted them. They had learned that true intimacy comes not from presenting perfect, unblemished versions of ourselves, but from having the courage to share our whole stories, scars and all. And on stormy nights, when thunder shook the windows and lightning illuminated the darkness, Sarah no longer felt the weight of secrets pressing down on her chest. Instead, she would curl into David's embrace, grateful for the storm that had finally pushed her to share the truth, and for the man whose love had been strong enough to receive it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the transformative power of honesty in our relationships. Remember, sometimes the secrets we fear most are the very ones that can lead us to deeper connection and understanding.